Hey people, no, I was joking. Now this is a piece of Black history, and I thought this was very interesting. I first heard about this from the comedian Reginald Hunter when he mentioned it under one of his shows. Now, this is Walter Francis White. This is from BlackHistory.net, and I'll put some more sources at the end. Walter Francis White was a leading civil rights advocate of the first half of the 20th century. As Executive Secretary of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, he was the chief architect of the modern African American freedom struggle. Walter White helped convince Franklin D. Roosevelt to issue an executive order in 1941 prohibiting racial discrimination of defense industries and establishing the Fair Employment Practices Commission. Walter White was born in 1893 in Atlanta, Georgia. His father, George, was a postman, and his mother, Madeline, a former school teacher. The younger of two sons in a family of 7 children, Walter White inherited light coloring from both parents. He emphasized in his autobiography, A Man Called White, "I am a Negro. My skin is white, my eyes are blue, my hair is blonde. The traits of my race are nowhere visible upon me. 5 of his great-great-grandparents were black, and the other 27 were white. All of his family were light-skinned, and his mother, Madeline, was also blue-eyed and blonde. Her maternal grandparents were Dilcia, a slave, and Dilcia's master, William Henry Harrison, who much later became President of the United States. Madeline's mother, Marie Harrison, was one of Dilcia's mixed-race daughters by Harrison, and her father, Augustus Ware, was a white man. Because his entire family was light enough to pass as white, they faced a unique array of problems. Aboard Atlanta's Jim Crow cars, the family found if they sat in the white section, African Americans accused them of passing. But if they sat in the white section, African Americans accused them of passing. But if they sat in the African American section, they faced embarrassing stares and rude remarks. To avoid humiliation, children walked everywhere or rode in the surrey their father had purchased. During the Atlanta race riots of September 1906, a white mob nearly burned down his family's home. The event was formative for White, then 13, and made him aware of the meaning of racial identity, influencing his subsequent political and literary careers. Wright wrote of that pivotal moment: "In the flickering light, the mob swayed, paused, and began to flow towards us. In that instant, they were opened with me a great awareness. I knew then who I was, a Negro, a human being with invisible pigmentation which marked me as a person to be hunted, hanged, abused, discriminated against, kept in poverty and ignorance. In order that whose sin was white would have really at hand a proof and patent and inclusive, accessible to the moron and idiot, as well as to white man and genius. No matter how low a white man fell, he could always hold fast to the smoke conviction he was superior to 2/3 of the world population, but those 2/3 were not white." After graduation from Atlanta's University in 1916, Walter White worked for a time for Standard Life, a major African-American insurance company helped organize the Atlanta National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, NAACP, as secretary of the new branch. He led the drive to force the city to improve its public facilities for African Americans and attracted the attention of James Weldon Johnson, the first African American general secretary of the organization. A year later, Johnson secured White's appointment as assistant to the organization's chief administrative officer. While visiting Chicago, he narrowly escaped an ambush during the 1919 race riot. This time, the assailant was an African American man who fired at what he thought was a white man walking through the ghetto. Walter White's principal objective became the abolition of lynching. Aided by his fair skin, he made on-the-spot investigations of lynchings and race riots and conducted a vigorous, sustained drive for enactment of a federal anti-lynching law. Although no such law was enacted, the climate of public opinion was markedly changed by his investigations and exposés. In 1918, when he joined the NAACP staff, 67 persons, all but 4 of them were blacks, were lynched. In the year of his death, 1955, there were only 3 recorded lynchings, and none had occurred in the 5 previous years. Lynchings had become a rarity. In 1922, the year White married NAACP staff member Leah Gladys Powell, he met writer H.L. Emkin, who encouraged White to try his hand at fiction. White completed the manuscript of Fire in the Flint about a northern-trained African-American physician who returns to his native small-town Georgia. In 12 days, published in 1924, the novel, which ends with the doctor's lynching, was praised for its realistic portrayal of Southern life. Flight, White's second, less critically acclaimed novel, written in 1926, centers around a young New Orleans woman who crosses over the color line, then later relinquishes racial passing. Walter White's literary accomplishments earned him, in 1926, Guggenheim Fellowship. Walter White moved to southern France, intending to produce a third novel, but instead to non-fiction, and wrote Rope and Faggot, the biography of Judge Lynch. Written in 1929, the book was an important study of the various political, economic, social, and sexual influences of lynching. Through his cultural interests and his close friendships with white literary power brokers Carl von Vechten and Alfred A. Knopf, White was one of the founders of the new Negro cultural explosion, popularly known as the Harlem Renaissance. The period was of the intense literary and artistic production of Harlem, becoming the center of Black American intellectual and artistic life. In 1931, when James Weldon Johnson stepped down his position, White took it and served the NAACP executive secretary for the rest of his life. White took great care of the finances of the association and kept careful records. White assisted with all the issues of the NAACP and continued to write until he died on March 21, 1955. Well, I hope you've enjoyed that. Now, I'm not sure. Some people might say Walter White was mixed or he was completely white to start with, but he's been accepted as black throughout most of the history, so I'll just put it in here as the accepted version. So please comment, rate, share, and subscribe. If you'd like to support this channel, leave my GoFundMe in the description. If you'd like to follow me on Instagram, I'll leave there as well. Peace.